What's a thing that is dangerously close to collapse that you know about? Story 1, the Ogallala aquifer. You know how Kansas and Nebraska are known for essentially being endless fields of wheat and corn? Well, they do that by drilling wells to one of the world's largest aquifers deep under the Midwest. There isn't enough consistent rainfall in those areas for all those crops, so well water makes up the difference. But we're draining it, and it can't be replenished. Once it's drained, it's Dust Bowl 2.0 and no more large-scale farming in the Midwest. Story 2. There's a waste product of burning coal called fly ash. We use it in concrete. It makes the concrete better and cheaper. Nobody is building new coal power plants, and old ones are shutting down. It's getting harder and harder to source the ash. If we have to source it from far away, like China, the transportation costs erase the cost saving. We can get the same concrete with just cement and added chemicals, but it's more expensive. In 10 years, we probably won't be using it at all. It's a really minor thing that will have far-reaching consequences. Architects and engineers will probably look at ways to reduce concrete in their buildings as the costs increase. It's not likely to impact residential, but big downtown architecture is sure to be affected. Story 3. Personally, I live in a city called Lowell, Massachusetts, and there's the Rourke Bridge built 40 years ago that was meant to be temporary. Honestly, it reminds me of those horrible, scary bridges you've seen over rivers in Siberia or some other place in Central Asia. It's loud and bumpy, and you can feel the whole thing sway because it gets 25,000 cars crossing it every day. Not only that, you can actually walk under it since there's a river walk pathway it connects to, and you can see rusted sections just rotting away. About 6 months ago, a truck crossed it, and a panel on the surface somehow seesawed up into the gas tank. The truck made it across, but not before losing probably 80 to 100 gallons of diesel onto the bridge and into the river below. The river had a marshy, swampy area near the bridge, and you could see the fuel slick eddying and collecting into that area. I can't imagine much survived underneath. I'm sure a lot of fish eggs and small aquatic animals died down there. The city, state, and feds have known this bridge needs replacing for decades, and they know about the rust and rot, but they continue to say that it will last for now. Don't they always say that, though? There is a plan to make a new one next to it, but it won't be done until 2028, which we all know means it'll probably drag on into 2029, 2030, etc. I honestly don't think it will last that long. Story 4. Healthcare in the US. I'm not talking about paying for healthcare in the US. I think that's fixable. You can cut the costs by 30% by making it all covered by Medicare for all. I'm talking about actually having enough physicians, nurse practitioners, and physician's assistants to treat everyone. Burnout has gotten a lot worse in the US. Almost every physician I know is talking about retiring within 5 years, or at least cutting back dramatically. The big problems are 1, not enough medical schools/residency programs to train physicians. My hospital is in need of just about all specialties. Pre-med programs remain as a weed out for medical schools, which just means we need more medical schools. We make up for the lack of them by importing physicians from other countries. We need more medical schools and weed out a lot less potential graduates. Pre-med undergraduate courses include calculus, biology, chemistry, biochemistry, organic chemistry. I'm not saying any of them need to be removed. Just make enough medical schools that the medical schools will take Bs in these courses, then require almost perfect GPA for admissions. I can guarantee that almost no physician uses any of these courses in their day-to-day practice of medicine. If they did, it would be required in their continuing medical education, which it is not. 2. Too much paperwork. Too much hoops we have to go through on a regular basis. Not just the 100+ hours of continuing education, the quarterly tests to keep our board certifications up to date, the every 2-year basic life support, extended life support classes we have to take. Now there is mandatory education for opioid abuse, child welfare, and God only knows what else. Also, every 2-year licensing by your state medical board, DEA certification, etc. 3. Too much competition in an area, forcing physicians to compete with each other and therefore burning us out faster. It also means more duplication of effort in an area. 4. Most physicians now work for health networks, big business, which means less leniency when we need something, i.e., need to take a day off? You need to put it in the calendar 3 months in advance. You want to buy a stethoscope? It counts as part of your tech purchase for the year. Yes, a stethoscope, not an electric one, is considered tech, just like a phone or computer. 4. Patients have gotten a heck of a lot more demanding, and aggressively so. Everyone Googles up their problems and thinks they have the most rare BS disease. No one wants to listen to their physician's advice and just give time to see if things get better on their own. And if the physician doesn't say exactly what the patient wants to hear, the patient screams it from every website and review place, so everyone else thinks the physician is an idiot. Story 5. Literally, all infrastructure in North America. The majority of underground infrastructure, pipes, water lines, sewer systems, has been completely ignored in terms of maintenance, and has been totally ignored in terms of budgeting replacing the assets. There are towns that have bills of tens to hundreds of millions, not even mentioning larger cities, that have saved approximately 0% of the required amount by constantly pushing out the lifetime estimation of the assets. Lots and lots of bills are coming due shortly if the engineering estimates are accurate, and very few towns have saved anything for this scenario. We're basically living in a world where no one wants to be the person to say that we need to save money for long-term planning, and instead, everyone hopes things don't fail while they are leading and they can pass the buck. Story 6. IT knowledge. There are several factors at work here. Colleges are mostly a few years behind trends, if not more. So a lot of recent grads are way behind from the gate. Most colleges are now just shills for business licenses called degrees. You need this license to be allowed to have an entry job, and they know it, and charge whatever the market can bear. Pearson VUE has seized a huge amount of this space, which just adds to the cost, and tries to enforce certification tracks with government contract specs and all sorts of inroads. The cash cow of graduating college with six-figure jobs waiting for them is mostly gone. The junior roles have been outsourced overseas and have been replaced with people with multiple hats. There are very few middle roles, so the track of going from junior to senior has a huge gap that keeps getting wider. The senior roles are starting to age out. Many went into management and some are retiring. Knowledge and experience is getting lost. Companies reliant on technology to survive are cutting technology costs as a cost center because of the pressure of rising capitalism always producing value year to year. Thus, they send more jobs overseas and senior roles become too costly to maintain. We are incurring a lot of debt in aging infrastructure, and IT is no different. There are systems operating high-cost operations in factories, transportation, and utilities that haven't been upgraded in decades, and some of the people who knew how it all worked are dying off. Eventually, there won't be enough senior roles to teach younger people anything, and there will be a cascading series of knowledge gaps in current infrastructure, leading to huge failures. People say that kids today know computers, but they really don't. Most only know GUI and how to operate an iPad, not what makes the iPad work under the hood or how the internet works. Story 7. A lot of subscription services. Not just streaming services. I'm talking about the big corporate software subscriptions. I work in tech, and there's a very real panic going on at a lot of these companies because they built their entire network and service at a loss, funneled hundreds of thousands of investor dollars into a product with the idea that they would raise the price after and make it all back after getting a foothold. But here's the thing, the cost of running a live service program is much higher than just selling a license and letting people install the program and use it locally. You need servers, you need virtual machines, not to mention the person-hours difference between occasional software updates of regular software and a live service. So not only do they have to pay back that loss leading, they also need to make enough to keep up with running the service. They get in and they spread as far as they can. They reach every possible customer. They do what they planned on and jack the price now that they have dedicated users, but it's not enough. There just aren't enough customers to ever actually make the money needed to pay back their loans and run the company. Either your product is too niche, or there's too much competition, or in some cases you are literally selling to every potential customer, and it's still not enough to pay back your loss leads. And by the time they realize this, they can try raising prices. But at this point, some other company is going to be in the lose money, get customers phase doing the same thing you are. And if you raise the price again this quickly, you're going to breach the trust thermocline, and the customers you do have are going to jump ship and you'll make even less money. A lot of companies jumped on the software as a service train that was so successful for Microsoft and Adobe, but the thing is, they already had a ton of money to throw at projects. They could just eat the losses. Smaller companies don't have that luxury, but they made it seem so lucrative and easy that thousands of companies are slowly hemorrhaging themselves to death trying to replicate it. Story 8. The Los Angeles Court Reporter System. Among many other county services like the health department, you can add several county IT systems to that list. Court reporters went home in 2020, and most of them just never came back. There is such demand for court reporters that they now start at $100,000 a year with signing bonuses, except they still can't hire enough qualified people. The problem being that they were a very important part of the justice system in Los Angeles. Many courts do not allow electronic recordings as accurate portrayals of court discussions. In some probate and misdemeanor courts they do, but all others need a court reporter. If a judge rules against you, a properly created court transcript is needed to appeal your decision. Those aren't being given out in many cases any longer, and cases can be delayed indefinitely. No transcript, no appeal. No appeal means serious constitutional violations. Story 9. The Canadian healthcare system is teetering on the edge of total collapse. No one I know has or can see a doctor. My elderly relatives are being dropped by their doctors regardless of health issues. They've closed every mental health facility and walk-in clinic in our city of over 600,000 people. They are telling people not to come to the emergency room unless you are actually at risk of permanent injury or have a life-threatening injury. If we get sick, we are dead. Countless billions are flowing into the system and we are getting absolutely nothing out of it. All three levels of our government are pointing their fingers at each other saying fix it while we get left behind. They are clearly downplaying the issue to stave off mass protests at this point. I truly believe the outcome of this crisis will define the next generation of Canadian history, and we are going 100 kilometers per hour in the wrong direction. Story 10. Housing. There is a legitimate collapse coming in 2025/2026. During the height of COVID, no one was borrowing, so rates bottomed out. The people that had money, people not limited by COVID restrictions, nurses or other professions that got a lot of OT, truckers working through the supply chain issues, etc., could get mortgages for very little. Banks knew it wouldn't last forever, so they were throwing around adjustable rate mortgages like candy, but keeping fixed rate mortgages relatively normal. So a lot of people got ARMs, either as a refinance to a lower rate or as a purchase. A lot of these loans were approved with OT pay and above average income factored in, and this was often required to get people under debt to income ratios. For the buyers, because real estate was so bad during COVID, people were buying over the appraised value, often without inspections. At best, banks were lending 100% of the appraised value of the property, so if the selling price, after bidding wars and whatnot, was $50,000 over value, that had to be paid out of pocket, wiping out any savings. Because sellers were often stipulating no inspection or refusing to address anything that came up on the inspection, a lot of houses were sold with problems. So now you've got someone with a 100% loan-to-value home with wiped out savings, and the foundation is cracked, or the roof is leaking, or the plumbing is going. They don't have the cash to pay it, and they don't have the equity to do a HELOC. So they paid for repairs on credit, or just didn't fix it. And because home values spiked too much in 2020/2022, insurance rates and property tax bills spiked. Those increases get paid as the escrow portion of your monthly payment. If your insurance goes up $1,400 per year and your taxes go up $1,000 per year, which is totally plausible, that's a $200 per month increase. And these loans are ARMs, meaning the rate will adjust. There are limits on how much they can increase at one time and limits for life of loan increases, but it's still an increase. Someone on a 2-year or 3-year ARM is probably looking at their second increase in the next year or two. People with 5-year ARMs are coming up on their first adjustment. Those rates will go up. No one's ARM is staying the same, much less going down. So you've got people with escrow increases due to tax and insurance increases, and principal interest payments increase due to ARM adjustments. You are going to have a lot of people with payments going up $500 to $700 per month. And that COVID OT pay isn't around anymore. Nurses that were getting 50+ hours per week are getting 34. Trucking loads have dropped. Extra funds to school for COVID-era programs are drying up. So you've got people making less than they were approximately 4 years ago at a time when their mortgage payments are going up, and deferred maintenance, that they knew was an issue at purchase, is catching up to them. People literally will not be able to afford their mortgages. There is going to be a major housing crash in 2025/2026, and it was set in motion in 2020 and has been ticking down since.